Get started now. So welcome to Nursing 101. Just before we start, if everybody could be sure to keep themselves muted during the entirety of this event, that would be great. So yeah, so just the schedule for today, we're going to start off with some opening remarks, and then we'll move on to our speaker panel with our speakers Brennan and Amber, and then lastly, we'll move on to the long-awaited Q&A session. So yeah. So if you have any questions during the entirety of this event, we just ask that you hold off until the Q&A session, but if you do leave them in the chat beforehand, they will be answered at the end. So just keep that in mind. And also a note, try to ask questions regarding topics that haven't been covered in the presentation, just for in terms of saving time. So yeah. So just a little bit about me and just Valerie, our founder of Teen Health 101. So my name is Rafia. I'm the co-director of projects and events here at Teen Health 101. I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I'm currently in grade 11. I joined Teen Health 101 because creating accessible education opportunities to youth is something that's very important to me, because I grew up in a place where there's a lack of public education, so I've kind of seen the effects of that. And so by joining Teen Health 101, I hope to organize events such as this, which makes educational opportunities more accessible to teens everywhere. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll just pass it on to Valerie, our lovely founder of Teen Health 101.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm the founder of Teen Health 101. I'm from Wyckoff, New Jersey, right outside New York City. It's kind of like a really New Jersey thing to say you basically live in New York City, but just for reference, if you didn't know where that is, it's like about 20 minutes outside of the city without traffic, and then obviously a lot more. But yeah, that's just where I'm from. I'm a rising junior in high school, and then I go to school here in New Jersey. And then I'm the founder of Teen Health 101. Of course, I started this organization slash platform last summer, when right after kind of the height of the coronavirus pandemic. And I really wanted to just help combat the spread of misinformation that we've all kind of seen online, and also help to amplify teen voices in healthcare. So Teen Health 101 is a youth-led, again, nonprofit platform that focuses on creating multimedia and reliable resources about health, fitness, and to educate and inform the youth. And our main mission is to combat the spread of misinformation and be a platform for the youth to find simple and accurate information about all things health. So basically, if you haven't been on our website before, or if you don't already know kind of what we do, by multimedia platforms, we kind of mean we really use every sort of medium that exists to help educate the youth about health. So we have, we'll kind of go into it a little bit later, but just a brief overview. We have our website where we post articles. We create digital magazines. Let's see, we also have a podcast about kind of just teens discussing different health topics. Let's see, we also have these webinars, of course, where we've been focusing mainly on medical careers. And I'm sure I'm missing something, but that's kind of just some examples that of things we do to actually help create reliable resources about health. So some of our main kind of values and goals are reliability. So we want to create accurate and reliable sources for reliable resources for kind of all things health. So we actually make sure that although we are teens and we aren't medical professionals, we kind of ensure that we're promoting like actual facts and real information. We actually have a consultant board that helps us out with kind of vetting all of our information, making sure we're kind of phrasing information in the correct way, and promoting facts and etc. So that's actually how we as teens and as a youth-led organization ensure the accuracy of our information and our resources. So again, our second value is education. Of course, that's kind of what our whole mission is built on, to both combat misinformation and help educate the youth about different aspects of health. And then our final value is inspiration. So we use a lot of different medias, like I mentioned before, articles, podcasts, digital magazines, and more. So we kind of really want to inspire our audience, which is mainly teens, that there is no kind of one way to learn. There's a lot of different ways You can learn through any kind of medium, and we also want to inspire. I mentioned before, we wanted to amplify voices in the healthcare, inspire you to know that you make, just by kind of taking the time to educate yourself on different topics, especially in health, and inspire you to kind of take control of your health. So this is our website. That's just like a screenshot of our homepage. And then also, if you have your phone out, and if that's easier, you can actually scan the QR code and go on our website just to learn more about us and etc. And then also, we'll kind of drop the website in the chat right now if you want to go on it through your computer or whatever device you're using to join the event today. And then our Instagram is actually where our largest audience is. This is actually a really old screenshot. We actually have, I'm pretty sure we have like over 6,000 followers right now. Shout out to all of our followers. So yeah, if you wanted to check out our Instagram page, we'll also link that in the chat right now. And then again, you can also scan the QR code there as well. And then our team, if you were wondering who actually helps Teen Health 101 actually create the content and just run in general, we have two teams, so our ambassadors and our content creators. So content creators are people like Rafia and Anshika. She's our projects and events manager. Shout out to Anshika. Waves Anshika, because she didn't get to introduce herself today. Yeah, so she's over there. Anyway, so people like Anshika and Rafia, they help run events, they help create resources, etc. And then our ambassadors are people who help amplify our message, share our content, etc. And then right now our team actually has over actually 300 members. It's a little this presentation is a little slightly outdated, but yeah, that's just, and then our impact kind of has reached over 17 different countries. So yeah, that's just a little bit of insight. And then this is actually a link to, I believe, our card, and that just has links to everything we do, everything that we kind of accomplish here at Teen Health 101. And I'll drop this in the chat right now as well. And then finally, our next event, if you're still interested in exploring different medical career pathways, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, which is in May, we're doing Psychology 101. It'll be on Saturday, May 26th from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can kind of hear from psychologists and learn about the psychology field. And then you can register through that QR code. And then that's it from me. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us here today. Thank you to everyone who's not here who registered. And then thank you to our guests, Amber and Brennan. You'll be hearing from them next. And yeah, thank you so much again.
All right, so now we'll be moving on to our speaker panel. So our two speakers for today are Brennan and Amber. So Brennan, will you please take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brennan Belliveau, and I graduated in 2015 with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree from MacEwan University in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And since then, I have worked in a number of different fields, including pediatric cardiology and heart transplant care, pediatric gastrointestinology, and liver transplant care, pediatric mental health, adult mental health, forensic psychiatry, community health, including immunizations, and adult orthopedic rehab and pediatric orthopedic rehab. So quite a number of different experiences. And then following all of that, I worked in Canada for about 5 years. And then I decided that it was time for me to try a different challenge. And I immigrated to the US in 2019. Just before the pandemic hit. And I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area as a travel nurse. And I decided to end up staying here for a little bit longer. So I'm currently working in pediatric cardiology and lung and heart transplant care down here. So for me, I didn't go into nursing right after high school. At 18, I found that nursing for myself was just it is quite a big requirement. You really have to be very focused and very dedicated. You will have to make sacrifices, including both at school and out of school too. So if you have other commitments outside of the classroom, at that time I was still playing hockey and really enjoyed doing a lot of extracurricular activities as well too. So another big passion of mine was actually political sciences and economics, and I knew that it wasn't necessarily something that I felt could get me a really strong pathway to a career, but it was something that I wanted to do. So what I ended up decided on doing was I took 2 years of Bachelor of Science, which ended up taking arts courses in really. And so I took a bunch of political sciences courses, economics courses. But what I also did is that I took a number of courses that were required in my Bachelor of Science and Nursing degree, knowing that was what I eventually wanted to do. So that once I eventually transferred into my degree, that I would end up having an easier course load. So for example, instead of having 5 classes every semester, some semesters I may have only had 3 or 4, which made that a lot easier as well too. And the other thing I will say as well too is that getting into nursing school straight out of high school is proving to be quite challenging at this time. I know that the competitive averages, depending on the university, can sometimes be very high 80s, low 90s. So a different way of actually getting into the program, which is the way that I got into, was using 24 credits or 8 3-credit courses in university. And once you have 24 credits in university, they will then use your university marks instead of your high school marks. And then the competitive average usually to get in is a 3.0 on a 4.0 scale. So still challenging. It still takes a lot of effort and work to get into, but the message there is just don't be discouraged if you don't get into nursing straight after high school. It doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't be a nurse or that you can't be a nurse. It just means that the path might look a little bit different for you, like it did for me. And so the transition from high school to college, that's a really big transition. So there was a lot of students that I can recall that were 80s and 90s students. And the message that I do want to relay is that just because you're an 80s and 90s student in high school doesn't necessarily mean that that will transfer over to the university setting. University is a completely different environment and atmosphere. And in a way, you almost have to learn how to study and prepare, again, at the university level too. And everyone goes through this. So it's not like you should feel that this is all of a sudden going to be this new challenge that you're going through alone. It just means that it's going to take some effort and some time to relearn how to write papers. The expectations are different there when it comes to studying. For myself, it takes a lot of extra time. They do say that for every 1 hour of classroom time, you will have 2 hours of time outside of the classroom when it comes to either studying or doing papers, assignments, things like that too. And I would say that that is absolutely true. So a full-time class schedule is often 5 3-hour courses a week. So when you look at that and you say, okay, I've got 15 hours of class time, you should probably expect an additional 30 hours of studying time. So a great idea would be to create a schedule and to actually block in study or work time around the classroom time as well too. And some things that I found were great must-have resources and study strategies. Flashcards were my absolute go-to for everything. I found that rewriting a lot of the content out onto a flashcard was very helpful, rather than just reading a concept or an idea, which could often go, in one ear and out the other. When you're actually longhand writing something, you're much more likely to retain that information. And so I would write a concept. It could be a disease or a medication on one side, and then I would highlight certain key points on the other side too, and I could test myself as I was preparing for an exam as well too. So I would highly recommend flashcards for that. And then, how to participate in other opportunities in the university setting. So when you're in university, you'll often find that there are so many different committees and clubs that you can join. Usually within the first month of each semester, you'll see a lot of booths kind of lined up with different interests that might spark some of your attention too. So if you're into, doing research, if you're interested in healthcare or really any other, additional passion or idea, there's usually a clever committee for you. And so there's often a lot of student committees that you can reach out to that can help you join a committee or club that you're looking for, as well as your instructors and professors are really good at knowing opportunities as well too. And often a lot of instructors and professors are also doing research themselves. If you have a professor that is, let's say, a master's or an instructor that's a master's educated instructor, they might be working towards a PhD too and have to do some research. So maybe they're looking for people to help them out with that. And that's a great opportunity to kind of get more involved as well. And so my story again, so I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So I was Canadian. I've always had an interest in working with children. Volunteer work was such a big thing for me. I used to volunteer with Big Brothers Big Sisters for a few years. I did that for 3 years actually. And so I knew I always wanted to work with kids. And I ended up having my preceptorship, which is your final placement in your nursing degree in pediatrics, and pediatric cardiology and heart transplant care is where I was. As well as GI services and liver transplant care. And I ended up staying there for 5 years, and also, in addition to working there full time, ended up working in pediatric psychiatry for 4 years alongside that. So being in two different environments actually I found to be really, really helpful, being around two different teams, two different organizations. I was able to learn a lot, and that foundation really helped to prepare me to become a travel nurse and eventually immigrate to San Francisco and work with the pediatric cardiology and heart transplant care team right here in California. So the general path to becoming an RN. So, there is the traditional pathway of typically you apply, either in grade 11 or grade 12 if you have the marks that meet the competitive average to get in. For myself, I had good marks, but I didn't have the best marks. And so I saw that as an opportunity to, get a few courses done from the program that I would need to do, and also get some courses that I was interested in taking out of the way as well too. So in those 2 years from turning, from 18 to 19 to 20, I was able to get a number of courses out of the way that I knew I would need in my nursing degree. And also, in those 2 years too, you also learn how to write papers, how to prepare for exams. And so once you get into the nursing program, you have a 2-year head start of being a university student, where, maybe your colleagues are just coming, right out of high school. So, you've got a real advantage there when it comes to, having a really strong foundation from the very beginning of your program too. So, never be discouraged if you don't get into the nursing program right after high school. It doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't be a nurse again. It just means that your pathway to get there might look a little bit different. But in hindsight, yes, it took 6 years to get my degree because I did 2 years of a different program before, but I wouldn't have changed anything. And I'm really glad that I did it the way I did. And it made my course load so much easier for those 4 years. And I was actually in the program itself too. But there's a number of different ways to do it. I do know a lot of friends who became LPNs and then decided to do the bridging program to become an RN later, which is always a possibility. But if you do want to do the RN program or the BSN program, I do recommend going straight to that if that is your intention all along. Some of the biggest reasons why, when I had asked some of my friends that did transition from the LPN role to the RN role, was just that they found it quite difficult to motivate themselves doing courses by correspondence, and it ended up taking them a lot longer and being a lot more work than they had originally anticipated. And they said that without necessarily being in the classroom setting or having just done it all together at the very beginning, they would have chosen to do the BSN program. But if you are wanting to become an LPN and that's where you want to stay, then absolutely that is the right program for you. But if you're looking to become an RN, then I would recommend trying to do that program directly as well. And my last remarks, I do believe that nursing is the best career in the world. I might be a little bit biased, but the reason for this is that the demand is only increasing and the supply is not growing to meet this demand. So as you all know, just with changes to our aging population, with the baby boomers being older, what we're seeing is that people are living longer. They're living with more chronic illness than ever before. So the demand in healthcare is exponentially growing. But a large number of nurses come from that baby boomer population as well too. So, in the next 10 years, we could see, our half of our most experienced nurses phase into retirement. So while the demand for nurses is growing exponentially, the supply is actually going to decrease. And right now, we don't have enough nurses being educated to meet the current demand, let alone the growing demand too. So if you're looking at nursing as a position and are wondering about the job security and career opportunities, I don't know another profession quite like this, where the demand is growing so high that you could really, choose to work almost anywhere. And the conditions for nurses that you can work in are incredible. Where I work in California, we have something called safe patient ratio laws in place. So legally, you can only have a certain number of patients per nurse. It's the only state that does this, but I do know that other states in the country are looking to do this too. So while, our generation of nurses continues to become more vocal and outspoken when it comes to, what we feel is important to delivering safe patient care, I am confident that a lot, more improvements and changes to the healthcare setting that will benefit, not only nurses, but also the delivery of healthcare and the health of Americans will also grow as well too. So it's a really exciting place to be. And I will also say too that don't be discouraged by a test paper that doesn't go your way. This doesn't define your abilities as a nurse. When you think about it, when you put a bunch of students who are so used to achieving high 80s or 90s in high school all together, and maybe you're going to a school where they have a curve set at 70 or 75%. For a lot of people, those are grades that you're not used to getting. So, but that just doesn't necessarily reflect, who you are as a person or your capabilities of being a nurse. So never let that, take away from that. At the end of the day, everyone will get the same degree, the same piece of paper. The real learning comes from being in the clinical setting and having the clinical skills, the personable skills at the bedside to make someone feel special and cared for. And that will always exceed anything else. So never forget why you chose to be a nurse. And again, the real learning begins when you're actually in the clinical setting. And you guys are all going to do fantastic. And I think even being a part of today's presentation will hopefully answer some of your questions. And feel free to ask us anything that you feel is important to, hopefully facilitating your success at the end of the presentation. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Brennan, for your amazing presentation. So now we're going to move on to Amber's presentation. So Amber, please take it away.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here. I have a BA in communications, as well as I went kind of a different path than Brennan did. I have my ADN, which is my associate's degree in nursing, and then I got my bachelor's on top of that. So we can talk about a whole different way to get a nursing degree. There's so many different ways. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. And also after this presentation, if you want to connect with me more, my Instagram handle is Sparkly Scrubs, and I answer like every DM I get. So happy to talk you through any kind of pre-nursing questions you may have. All right, let's hop into it. Next slide. All right, so schooling. So I graduated from high school, just like all of you guys will. Then in high school, I really wanted to be a news anchor. That was like my big thing. Oh my gosh, I want to be a news anchor. So I flew out to San Francisco. I went to school out there for communications. And I actually started working for Discovery Channel and then Animal Planet, as well as National Geographic. And it was a really cool career in communications, but I got so burnt out. And if you know what I'm talking about, like just no motivation to want to go to work and like just so like sad, really depressed, honestly, about what I was doing. I felt like my career didn't have a huge impact in the world. I really felt like I wanted to do more to impact the world and help people out. So I kind of was sitting there thinking about my options, thinking about what, wouldn't take too long to get another degree in, what wouldn't be a super expensive degree to get, because my first bachelor's was very expensive. Bachelor's degrees do tend to be pretty expensive here in the United States. And then also what would pay well and what has a good demand. So I kind of settled on nursing. And it was like the best decision I ever made. I would never, ever go back and change that decision. So I went back to school for nursing and prereqs in 2018. At the end of 2018, I applied for nursing school. I got in, and then I started nursing school in 2019, graduated as an RN in 2020. And then I just graduated with my bachelor's degree actually like this week. So basically, I kind of dual enrolled both degrees, which is something you can do. And if you want to be able to do that, talk to me on Instagram, because it's kind of a complicated thing, but we can make it work for you. All right, next slide. All right, so common questions. How was the transition from college? I thought Brennan really did a great, he really explained this in such a great way. College is such a different beast, honestly. In high school, I was one of those kids who, I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't necessarily straight A's, but I got mostly A's and was in AP classes and, all that good stuff. But then my first college degree, okay, pretty well. Nursing, on the other hand, kicked my butt, like legitimately kicked my butt, especially the first semester, because the tests are so different than anything you've ever taken before. They're really tricky, and it's not necessarily being able to find the correct answer to the question. It's being able to find the best answer to the question. So it can be really, really hard. And like Brennan was saying, you have to put in so much more work in studying. So that was definitely a huge just difference for me. You have to really be able to manage your time. The best resources I had, honestly, this is going to depend on how you like to study and how you learn best. I think that's a little bit of like a personal discovery you have to find for yourself. Some people are, really good visual people. Some people, they have to do in order to learn. Some people, they can just like listen, all those different things. So, just have a good computer, have a good internet connection. And, I liked studying in bunches. So basically what I would do is I would watch like a YouTube video about the subject I was studying. I would read like a little bit of something from my textbook, and then I would take a couple quiz questions, and then I would give myself a break. And I would just like kind of keep repeating because I just think the really long study sessions, like all night, are not as productive as studying, taking a break, and getting back into it. I also loved being able to like visualize things in my head. So what I would do is I would take a condition, and I would think in my head, like, okay, what does this person look like with this condition? Would they be like sweaty? Would they have, swelling? Would they be red? All these things. And that way, when I was taking a test, I could close my eyes and think, okay, what does this person look like? Okay, they look like this. So then we're going to do this. We're going to give these kind of meds. So if you do go on the nursing path, I highly recommend doing that. It was really helpful for me. And then how to find other opportunities. Honestly, talking to your professors is such a great way to go. Not only does it help you with networking, and also can help you get a job in the future. Also, like Brennan was saying, these professors know a lot of different things that are going on in the community. By me asking my professors different questions, I was able to do COVID vaccines, COVID testing. I ended up getting a nurse externship in mother baby. It was so, so fun. Definitely talk to your professors, especially if you have a specialty in mind. Generally, what I would do is at the beginning of every semester, I would go up to my professor and I would say, hi, my name is Amber. Really excited to be in your class today, really excited to learn more. By the way, here's my goal. I would love to work, at the time I was saying labor and delivery, but it kind of morphed into any of the pediatric specialties with newborns. So labor and delivery, mother, baby, and NICU. Please let me know if you hear of anything. So by doing that, I ended up becoming the vice president of our nursing association as well. I won a leadership grant from my school, a whole bunch of other different things. And the teachers really knew me personally because I was willing to put in that effort to get to know them and have them get to know me. Next slide. Okay, so my story, like I said, I went to college the first time. I thought I was fulfilling my destiny. Also, it was something that my parents kind of pushed me into doing. They were like, oh, well, you love this, don't go to community college, go to a big college, get your bachelor's degree in this thing. We're so proud of you, And I really think parents can put a lot of pressure on high school students. And I'm here to tell you, you have to follow your heart a little bit, be smart in what you want to do and what you want to study, but this is going to be your career at the end of the day. You have to like what you're going to do. Okay. You have to like going to work, or else life is just going to be such a drag, honestly. So I fell out of love with communications about halfway through college, to be honest. And I was just kind of embarrassed to say I didn't want to do it anymore. So I just kept going with it. And then we could see that I only really made it, like 4 years out in the workforce before turning back around and going back to college. So get to know the signs of burnout with yourself and, understand if you're falling out of love with something and like being able to examine, is this something I really want to do in my life, etc. Anyways, so like I said, I worked for Nat Geo, I worked for Discovery. I actually kept working there while I went back to school and got my prerequisites. And it was a lot of hard work. Next slide. So I am a career changer with a passion for women's health as well as pediatrics. I went to school hell-bent on being a labor and delivery nurse, but you should have an open mind because labor and delivery actually ended up being one of my least favorite rotations I had. So I ended up getting a nurse externship on a mother-baby unit, which is like a unit that moms go to after they have their baby to recover. And it's kind of where they monitor the babies as well. And I loved it so much. And then I applied to mother baby positions as well as NICU positions. NICU is the neonatal intensive care unit for anyone who doesn't know. So basically what that is taking care of babies from birth to 1 year with critical conditions. So, one day I might have a baby that just has problems feeding, and another day I might have a baby who needs like a chest tube and blood transfusions and all that kind of stuff. I ended up getting a job offer in both mother baby and the NICU, and I ended up choosing the NICU because I thought it would be challenging and very cool. So I currently work in a level 3 NICU. Level 4 is the highest level you can go to, but in Maryland where I'm at, there aren't a whole lot of those. So level 3 is super cool. We basically do a lot of surgical cases. We have babies with cardiac issues, with gastrointestinal issues, with oxygen needs, all sorts of different stuff. It's amazing. It's challenging. It's sometimes heartbreaking, but in the end, it's so rewarding. So the general path to RN, graduate high school, obviously get through that, then take prerequisites for nursing. So what you'll want to do is kind of identify what schools you are ideally looking at. A lot of people are going to tell you to go straight for the bachelor's degree. And I understand why that is. A lot of people, they want their kids to go ahead and get their bachelor's degree, right? It looks, I think appearance wise, people want to be able to go to a big university and say, oh, I got my degree from so-and-so. And bachelor's degrees are great and fine. And that's awesome if you choose that path. But it is also very expensive, especially here in the United States, if that's where you're at. And as someone who has student loans from their first bachelor's degree, I just want to very kindly warn you that the loans for bachelor's degrees really stack up and it's hard to pay down. So if you're going to go the bachelor's degree route, I really recommend trying to get scholarships, trying to get grants, try to do something that's not a loan, because it's really hard when you get out of school. You think, as a kid, I know, or in high school, you think, oh, I'll just pay it off really fast. And then everything kind of stacks up in adulthood and it's really hard to pay it back. So that's just my little word of warning for that. The only place I would definitely recommend going ahead and getting your bachelor's degree, though, is California, because it's extremely difficult to get a job there without a bachelor's degree. People will tell you that, oh, hospitals don't hire nurses who don't have a bachelor's degree anymore, but it's absolutely not true. I first graduated from an associate's program, and every single person that was in my cohort got hired to exactly the specialty they wanted. And Maryland is also quite a competitive state. So, I really root for associate's programs. They usually are at community colleges. I know that doesn't sound as cool to go to, but it's so much cheaper. You get your degree in 2 years instead of 4. And you can, like I said, do your bachelor's on top of it, which is what I did. So I actually got my bachelor's degree overall within 2.5 years instead of the 4. Or you can get your associates and then you can do a bridge program called an RN to BSN after you get your RN degree. And basically you can do that as fast as you want or as slow as you want it. And usually your hospital will also pay for it. So just a couple options for you to think about. Again, like getting into the nitty gritty with that, you could ask questions here, or you could talk to me on Instagram about it. I'm happy to go through all the different options. Like Brennan was saying though, I really don't recommend getting an LPN unless you want to stay an LPN. If you do want to do that, recognize that LPNs, generally speaking at this point, mostly work in like some urgent care, some doctor's offices, and then mostly like senior living facilities, like nursing homes. So if you do want to become an RN, I would say just go for that first, because a lot of the LPNs who are trying to bridge to RN in my program really struggled. So I really recommend just going straight for the RN. And yeah, after you graduate either the ADN or the BSN program, you graduate and pass NCLEX. So you pass the same test, you have the same licensure either way, unless you're an LPN, that's different. But for the associates and the bachelors, you have the exact same credentials basically. Okay, so final words, follow your heart, have an open mind. Like I said, something may surprise you. And then don't dump out information after every semester. I cannot stress this enough, because nursing builds on itself. So you can't just, it's not like a history course or something where you can just like learn it and forget it. You have to be able to build on top of it, which is why nursing is such a hard undergraduate degree. You really have to keep so much information in your head. And then be kind to yourself. Nursing school and really any college is so hard. You really just need to be kind to yourself. Know that self-care is everything. So important. And again, happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Amber and Brennan, for your inspirational and informational presentations. I'm sure they were very helpful to everybody here. So now we're going to move on to our long-awaited Q&A session. So if you have any questions, you can just drop them in the chat. So the format that you can use is your name and then the question, and if you have a specific speaker that you want to answer the question, and then I will just read them out loud in order. So I guess I'll start from the top because we did get some pretty early on. Just give me a minute. Okay, so this question is, I guess, to both speakers. Is it better to get an associate's degree in nursing than do another 2 years to get a BSN, or just do 4 years all at the same time? And if you choose to get a BSN after getting your associates, do you have to take the NCLEX again?
It's for Amber to answer.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brennan. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say this is all you here.
So I really feel like this is like very individual. I'm not going to tell you, oh, one is better than the other, because that's really not true. Bachelor's is great if you can get a scholarship and like go for it, or you have like an affordable school that's in your area, go for it. That's awesome. All the bachelor's degrees in my area were really expensive. And I just didn't feel like I could get enough scholarships to make it worth my while to go there. So when you think about it this way, if you get the associates, you can start working in 2 years. Bachelor's, there are some where you graduate in like 3 years versus 4, but so you are waiting a little bit longer to start working. Like I said, the only place I would really recommend, like you can't do an associates, is California. I've just heard that nurses over there with an associate just cannot get hired. But here and in most states, hospitals will hire associates and then they'll pay for you to get your bachelor's. And the bachelor's classes that you would take like either as a bridge program or dual enrolling are not as difficult as your associate's programs. Your associate program is really your core classes. And I'm sure Brennan's degree was probably like this too. Like there's classes that are like core, really difficult. They're, the disease processes and things like that. And then there are classes that are more like, like the theories of nursing and leadership and things like that. So the bachelor's degree portion is more of like the leadership, kind of like fluffier classes. So it's really not that difficult to go ahead and do those either at the same time as your associate's degree through a dual enrollment program, or do them after you graduate. It's just totally a personal decision. I just think the associate's degree is so much more affordable. And I really just, I think people are really pushed into getting bachelor's degrees right out the gate. So I just kind of want to give you that perspective that it is so much cheaper. You do
our-
not have to take the NCLEX another time, by the way. Sorry, I didn't answer that. You do not. You just take it once.
Okay, our next question is for Brennan from Mackenzie. What are some of the requirements and or necessary experiences to become a travel nurse?
Yeah, so typically to become a travel nurse, they're going to want 1 year of full-time experience before you begin traveling. The reason for this is because, you know, when you become a travel nurse, you don't get an extensive training or orientation. So, you know, typically your orientation might look like 3 or 4 days, and that's it. The whole idea of travel nursing is to take experienced nurses and fill, you know, staffing shortfalls quite quickly. Typically, assignments are about 13 weeks in length. They're all across the US. So once you have a little bit of experience, it is such an incredible part of the profession where you get to travel and explore all across the country. I would highly recommend it to anyone who has got the travel bug and interest in exploring the USA. But so with that though, with your experience, you will be working in the same specialty that you have your experience in. So again, you know, I came from pediatrics, so I stayed in pediatrics. You know, there were other opportunities in mental health and specialties that I had experience in as well too. But it is a very quick transition. So that is why you should have at least 1 year of experience. And for me, I, you know, worked in Canada for, you know, about 5 years. And I would be hesitant to say that 1 year would really be enough to feel super competent to just jump into another organization. You know, just given that different centers have different charting systems, or you know, just different policies and procedures. Once you feel very confident and competent, you know, in your current clinical setting, and you're able to, I think, you know, one of the big things to becoming a nurse is you're not going to feel super great right out of the gate. You know, I think probably the first 6 to 9 months, you know, I remember feeling like nervous or just, you know, uneasy about, you know, what I was doing. And that's just a completely normal progression. Most nurses feel, you know, this way for a little while, and then all of a sudden, you know, it feels like you just kind of get it, and you feel really good about what you're doing. But I would say once you're at that point in your career where you, you know, really know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you know, you can kind of predict what, you know, maybe orders are going to be written, or maybe you're talking to a practitioner and saying, hey, you know, I looked at this blood work and these levels are higher, these levels are low. You know, do you think that we should order this medication, or do you think we should order this diagnostic procedure? And you know, when you start getting answers like, yeah, you know, that sounds like a good idea, or yes, I'll order it. You know, then I think you've shown your confidence and competence in that setting too, where, you know, once you've taken, you know, complete ownership of your practice, you know, maybe that's a good time to look at becoming a travel nurse. But short answer is, you know, at least 1 year full-time experience in a hospital setting is what you really need. And if you're coming from Canada, as I know that there's some nurses or interested nurses from Canada, 1 year is the minimum requirement as well too.
All right, our next question is from Alma. She asks, what do rotations look like? Is it sort of like shadowing nurses and observing what they do?
I think it depends on what kind of floor you're on, and also just, you know, how the day is going for that nurse. Sometimes my clinical rotations would look like me shadowing one-on-one with a nurse and going through and basically doing everything with them for all of their patients. And then others, I would have my own specific patients. And then, you know, maybe you have like 1 or 2 nurses that are involved with those patients, and you basically are the nurse for the most part. And you do, you know, all the cares, all the things like that. You also are doing a lot of the CNA work usually. And then when it comes to things like administering medication, you might grab the nurse or your preceptor from your school, and then you do that together. So it's kind of a mix. You also will be working on paperwork like care plans, and that will involve you looking at your patient as a whole and kind of being able to figure out like, and writing down like, what are their problems? Okay, they have this problem, so therefore we might do this to try and help them, things like that. But it really just depends. If you can get an externship though, or, you know, if you have a practicum at your school, that is a lot more of one-on-one time. And that's, in my opinion, a lot better because you're seeing really what the nurse is doing the whole time versus doing a lot of the guessing work on your own and doing the CNA work. But yeah, it just depends on what kind of rotation you're on.
Okay, our next question is from Yasser to both speakers. What does a day in your lives look like?
Day in the life, hey? Well, the nice thing about being a nurse is that, many positions are different. So you've got some positions that are 8-hour days and you've got some positions that are 12 and a half. So for me, I work 12 and a half hour shifts, which means that I work 3 days a week and I have 4 days off. So that's one of the things that I love about being a nurse is that, I actually get to spend more time, away from the hospital than I do at the hospital. And I love being a nurse. I love getting to go to the hospital, but I think one of the incredible things about the nursing profession is not only what it does for you at the hospital, but what it affords, you to do outside of the hospital as well too, which is such an incredible thing. But going back to a typical day at work, what'll typically happen is, you'll show up to your hospital, arrive on the unit maybe 15, 20 minutes early. You'll see your assignment on the board. Maybe you've got, in California, 2 or 3 patients. You'll write down, you'll get your printout of your patients and you'll go through the chart before you start your shift report. Write down notes. I typically just write down, what medications are due, diet orders. For me, since we have a lot of babies, it might be feeds every 3 hours, different procedures, blood tests, things that have to be done that day. And then you have a little morning huddle, and then you meet with your nurses to have a handoff. Every handoff looks a little bit different. And then you kind of start your day. So at the very beginning of your day, I think one of the most important things, and, when you kind of build that competence and confidence is when you've got a number of patients, you have to really decide, how you're going to triage your day, how you're going to, you're going to have to map out your day. So if I have 3 patients, obviously the first patient I want to see is who I think is probably going to be, who might be the sickest, for example. Or, let's say I have 3 patients and one is a transplant patient. Well, I know that transplant medications, really have to be given on time. So I need to kind of prioritize that as my focus. And so after you give your morning medication, do your morning assessments, then you do your charting and kind of your day just kind of maps around some of the tasks that you have to do. But it's a continuous, follow through of, I think, the nursing process of continuously, just, doing, your nursing assessments and diagnosis and kind of just following through and evaluating things, throughout the day as well. And then the same sort of transition at the end of your day. Well, you'll kind of prepare everything for the next nurse and do your handoff before you leave for the hospital, to go home at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, I agree. That's basically what the day looks like. Like Brennan said, in each specialty, it looks like slightly different just because of like the patient population. In NICU, really the only difference is we have usually anywhere from like 1 to 3 babies, just depending on how critical they all are. And with babies, we give care every 3 hours. So it's kind of just like rotating with them. And then in between that, obviously just like talking with the doctors about any new orders, getting admissions, sometimes we attend births and have to do, oxygen there or help the babies kind of transition right at birth. And then also helping parents out because the NICU is a really, really stressful place for parents. So just kind of helping keep them calm. I get to do a lot of fun crafts with the parents, their babies. That's a really rewarding part of the NICU. But yeah, I thought Brennan's explanation was really great.
Our next question is from Melina. She asks, what are some improvements you would really like to see made in the field of nursing to either speaker?
Amber can start.
Some improvements. Well, I think Brennan touched on a great point earlier when he said that a lot of the current nursing population is of the baby boomer population. And I think that a lot of that population allowed some things to slide that our generation and your generation are no longer letting slide, such as I do think that there is a significant amount of racism in healthcare. and we see it in all units. So I really think there's so many ways we can improve that. I won't go through all the nitty gritty because it would take up so much time, but really improving that, as well as Brennan mentioned the ratios for patients. Luckily in the NICU, we don't really have to worry about that. But for example, like long-term facilities for like nursing homes, they have such a insane patient ratio. I've seen nurses have like 30 patients to just one nurse, and that's not okay. So those two things really need to be improved.
I think coming from my, mixed socialist background in Canada, I think one of the biggest things that I would love to see change in healthcare is a transition from such a focus to a reactive treatment-based, medical system to a proactive preventative-based system as well too, where we're seeing it. It's going to be a very challenging situation with the aging population. And very limited capacity in long-term care facilities, for example, too. I think the whole idea of trying to prevent people from getting sick and keeping them, living in the community for as long as possible and for as healthy as possible too, will be such a important focus for medicine into the future too. So we could be seeing a big shift into a lot more, community-based resources. I would hope into the future. I think in Canada, because it's a public system and it's a taxpayer system, that it's a cheaper alternative. And I think that's what could happen. And maybe we'll see a lot of that in the United States as well too. We'll see.
All right, our next question is from Barisha. They asked, how long is nursing school and what is your opinion on pediatric nursing? To both speakers.
Take it, Brennan.
Yeah, so they're typical, I'll let Amber talk about the ADN program, but for the BSN program, it's typically 4 years. I know for my university, they did give you, I believe it was up to 5 years to complete the program. I obviously did 2 years of a different program where I did take nursing courses beforehand, which was very helpful. But your typical BSN program is 4 years in length. And then for pediatrics, I personally love pediatrics. I think every specialty in every area is unique in its own way. In pediatric, it is quite different too, because I think for our population, and I know Amber can speak to this too, but kids are so resilient. They might not necessarily understand what is going on, but I've seen kids who get heart transplants and then a week later they want to play, they want to just have fun, where an adult, maybe the weight or the gravity of the situation might sink in a little bit more, and it's a different sort of feeling. And even with a lot of challenging cases and situations, pediatrics, it's a lot of fun. We have child care specialists, child life specialists who we spend a lot of time playing with the kids. They can even do schooling in the hospital. A lot of really neat, fun activities too. So we try and make it as positive an experience as you possibly can. And I truly enjoy it. I think seeing a child who comes in and is able to eventually hopefully walk out with their family and regain as much quality of life as possible is such a rewarding experience. But for anyone interested in pediatrics, I would highly recommend it. It's absolutely not for everyone. And between pediatrics and adults, they're completely different. Kids are not just little adults. It's a very specialized population, and the neonatal population is a whole nother specialized world as well too. So on top of that, it's just exciting because if you ever feel like you need a change, you don't necessarily have to change out of nursing. There's so many really cool specialties within the hospital, or research, teaching, working in the community too. So without leaving the profession, it feels like you can do a number of different professions, I guess, if you will. But
oh, I love everything you just said. I totally agree. To start off, ADN programs, so the associate's degrees typically take about 2 years. So it's a lot faster if you are looking to get into the workforce a little bit faster. I love everything Brennan just said. Pediatrics is so specialized, and like you were saying, neonatal. So like the babies are even more, of their own specialty, and they are not just little adults. They are so much more complex and so much more simple in so many ways. You know, having a lot of clinicals in adult world, when I came to the NICU, I would do things. My preceptor would be like, "Wait, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, we don't do this here with them." And she's like, "No, oh my gosh, like what?" So every unit has their own things that they, you know, they do or don't do. I personally love working with the babies. I knew that's what I wanted to do as soon as I went into nursing school. No hate to adults, but babies are where it's at. We have the cutest patient population on earth. And like Brennan was saying, they're so resilient. Like you would think like the NICU or pediatrics has a lot of heartbreak, and it does have some heartbreaking times. We do have babies that pass away, or babies that need to go in for very, very serious surgeries where we don't know what it will be like for them or what their quality of life will be like. And it's obviously really hard for the parents as well. But, you know, a great example is one of my first ever patients actually in the NICU was this baby that came in, and I had her right at birth, and we really did not think this baby was going to make it. I mean, the doctors were pretty much ready to just let her go, and she's discharging this week from the NICU. So it's just so, it like almost brings me to tears thinking about it, because they're so resilient, and it's honestly amazing. It restores my faith in humanity. And it just makes me want to keep coming to work every day, because you really never know what these kiddos are going to do, or how they're going to, you know, how they're going to make, you know, their way in the world, how they're going to discharge, how they're going to be the next day. It's just such an incredible, incredible place to work.
All right, our next question is from Sarah. They ask, would you say pediatrics is more competitive than other specialties? To both speakers.
I think it depends. There's a lot of really competitive units in nursing. Adult ICU is also very competitive. CV ICU, which is like a cardiovascular intensive care unit. Honestly, all of them can be kind of competitive in their own ways, you know, even labor and delivery, things like that. The NICU is quite competitive. Brennan, I'm sure you can touch on how competitive, or which one of your many careers were one of the most competitive to get, but really just depends. But that's why it's important to do things while you're in school that can make you stand out on a resume. Like, for example, even though I'd never worked in a NICU as like a CNA, or really I didn't even have clinical days in the NICU, but I had so much time in mother baby, and I was able to explain, you know, my time there and how it would relate to NICU. And also I had so many leadership opportunities in school that I think for the team that hired me, you know, they just saw so much potential in me. And really, when you're a new nurse, that's what hospitals are looking for you, not necessarily skill, but potential, because you do not learn like half of being a nurse in nursing school. I'm just going to be honest, you just don't. So you learn so much of it after you graduate.
Yeah, I think Emmer touched upon everything quite well. When it comes to being competitive, you know, I think that, you know, one of the biggest things you can do is, again, like I volunteer with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I tried to show initiative that was a field that I wanted to work in. So I do think that helps. If you can work as a CNA, that is fantastic experience. You know, for the people from Canada, you know, I worked as an undergraduate nurse employee or a uni, which is a really neat position. After your second year in the BSN program, you can work, you know, under your scope of practice. It's very similar to like an LPN role. And so I worked as a uni in pediatrics. So that was just fantastic experience. And by the time I, you know, had graduated, it was almost like I had worked like a, you know, a part-time position in pediatrics for 2 years, which was really neat as well too. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities to shadow or to volunteer or to really help kind of separate yourself a little bit. But, you know, if you really want to be in a specialty, you'll find a way to get there. It's very rare that I've never met someone who had a dream of working in a specialty and couldn't find a way to get there. So
I agree.
Our next question is from Emma. They ask, any tips on remaining motivated for school or work-related stuff for either speaker?
Tips for staying motivated. You know, I think just honestly not overwhelming yourself. Like for me, probably one of the most important things was just taking everything one exam or one paper at a time, and just slowly kind of chipping away at it. I went in knowing that it was going to be a challenging program. I knew that not everyone, again, who went in with 80s and 90s was going to get 80s and 90s, but you start getting excited. I think for me, having clinicals and getting the mix of being in the classroom and the clinical setting helped to really kind of prevent burnout, just because it always felt like it was something different. And you're going to make so many incredible friends. Like some of my best friends today are still from nursing school, even though I live in a different country now. And I've gone on trips with them, and we've just had so many fun nights. And after at the end of semester exams, a lot of us would go for dinner and drinks and hang out. And I think it's just this whole like kind of getting through it together, and you're not alone was such an important thing. But just knowing that what you have ahead is just this incredible career. Again, I think one of the best careers out there. And just reminding yourself, like, to get into a nursing program, you belong there. There's a lot of people that apply, not everyone gets in. So never feel that you are out of place or that you shouldn't be here. You are more than capable, and you will get through it. Not everyone will have the best test scores at all times, but it's just, again, like we've talked about with our patients, as students and as nurses, we have to really work on being resilient as well too. And, if you don't get the best mark in a test or exam, you kind of just learn from where maybe you could have made improvements, and you just move on and keep going. At the end of the day, you get the same piece of paper. And again, the real learning and excitement comes when you're in the clinical setting, working as a nurse too. So, and do fun things, if you like playing sports, if you like going to yoga, if you need to go for walks and do whatever you like to do in your spare time, dedicate, a night or two a week around that. I think if you create a really good study schedule, again, if you have 15 hours of classroom time and you block off an additional 30 for school time, that allows you to free up some time to, maybe see family or friends, or to go out to a movie or do fun things at the same time too. But I always recommend, putting in the work first, and then you gotta enjoy things at the same time too. So, just not falling behind is a big way to kind of continue to feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with all of that.
Our next question is from Morgan. How did you ultimately decide on becoming a NICU nurse? And this is to Amber.
So, like I said, I went into school thinking like I'm going to be a labor and delivery nurse and nothing else. I'm not interested in anything else. And then I had that clinical, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, this wasn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. And I kind of was like, oh no, did I make a huge mistake here by going to nursing school? And then I started working on a mother baby postpartum unit in the summer between my third and final semester. And I just fell so much in love with the world of after birth, like postpartum world. And I found that I really, really enjoy taking care of, the moms as well, but the babies in particular. I mean, it was just so much fun. They're so new and so innocent, and, there's just so much of their life ahead of them. So I applied to mother baby and to NICU. I got a position in both. And then I really had to think about, okay, which one do I want to do? And I ultimately decided on NICU because I felt like NICU was more challenging and there is a lot more variety. On mother baby, you are going to be with well babies. That's kind of, what's there. It's well babies, and then moms of all sorts. Maybe mom is unwell and mom, has issues, but the babies generally are always well on that unit. On NICU, we have everything from babies who they just need like a little bit of help after they're born. They just need some extra oxygen to, we've had some babies who they haven't gone home until day 200 of their life. They needed a lot of help. So every day is different. All the babies there are different. And I thought that was a really cool way to challenge myself. And so that's why I ended up picking the NICU. And honestly, I'm really, really glad I picked the NICU because I don't regret it at all. It's an amazing place to work. It's so inspiring.
All right, to end off our Q&A session, this will be the last question from Alma. What is a nurse residency / how do you get into one, to both speakers?
So nurse residency is typically, it's often like a 1-year program for new graduate nurses with hospitals. So what a lot of hospitals will do is that they will develop this really neat, 1-year program to orientate and train their new nurses. It's a significant investment into the new nurse, but it's incredible because, rather than just getting a traditional orientation of maybe like 10 buddy shifts, and then joining as a new nurse, which can be absolutely frightening. These residency programs will do a lot of classroom time. You might even be doing some projects, and you learn within a cohort of other new graduate nurses as well too. So, in your first year outside of the nursing program after you graduate, it's basically like a paid 1 year, training transitional type position where you're working, as an RN, but it's an incredible investment. And I think that if you're able to get into a new residency program for a new graduate nurse role, I'd highly recommend it because the learning experiences are incredible. You typically see these positions at a lot of big organizations. I've seen a ton across California. I couldn't speak to a number of other areas across the country, but they are just to sum it up, just a 1 year educational transitional role that hospitals have for new graduate nurses to really ensure that by the time you're on the floor and you're doing basically another preceptorship on the floor, you are as confident and competent as you possibly could. Because I think the hospitals down here know too that the stronger their nurses, the stronger the organization. So that early investment really does pay dividends long term, and I think the likelihood of you staying on with that organization and really enjoying your time there and the quality of your life is so much better too when you've got that little extra amount of education and confidence. But
yeah, I'm actually in a nurse residency right now, and it's great. I definitely recommend it to anyone when you do become a new nurse. So it's a year-long program, like Brennan said. So I only have a year commitment to this hospital. So if I end up not liking it, which I do love my hospital, so I won't be leaving, but I'm only there for a year if you didn't like it. Otherwise, I'll just keep working there. But I have a preceptor for the first 6 months, which is actually really great. You might be thinking like, oh my gosh, you already graduated. Like, let me just get out there by myself. And the truth is that once you're out of school, like we both have said earlier, truly so little. It's actually kind of frightening at first how little because you've gotten such a wide overview of so many different topics, so many different populations of patients. So especially if you're going into a specialty zone like NICU or the ICU, something like that, you really need quite a lot of handholding at first. But the great thing about it is I have a preceptor, and she basically does nothing but sits there as a resource for me. So I take care of all the patients as the main nurse. And basically she's there as like my net to catch me when I need someone, so like, oh, okay, this baby has a chest tube. I've never had a chest tube before in a baby. Okay. And then she's there and she can help me. And then she teaches me. And so it's wonderful. Like, she is so awesome. I feel so confident with her, like right by my side. And it makes me feel really confident that one day when she's not there with me, that I will actually know what to do in most circumstances. Like Brennan said, we do have some extra additional classes. I've had to take like some extra courses on like neonatal resuscitation and CPR specifically for babies. Kind of specific courses like that that have to do with my specialty. There's one other girl who is also a new grad in the NICU with me. So we're kind of on this journey together. So it's great to have that person to relate to as well. But it's an awesome experience. I really, really recommend it.
All right, so just before we end the event, we'll be taking a quick gallery photo of all of our participants and speakers, of course. So if you feel comfortable, you can turn on your cameras. So just be used for some of the graphics for this event. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then Anshika, if you want to take over.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just wait for people to put their camera on if they want to. But if anyone wants to turn it on. Oh, okay, thank you. But okay, I'll just give it a second. All right, I think that's pretty much everyone that's gonna do it. So I'll just take it in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Got it, everyone. So
All right, thank you everyone so much for coming. Be sure to follow Teen Health 101 and our guest speakers on their socials. So the PDF of the slides and the recording of this video will be posted on our website, and everything will be sent in an email. Again, thank you so much to our speakers, Amber and Brennan, for their amazing presentations and for answering all of our burning questions. And yeah, that's all for us. We hope to see you at another Teen Health 101 event soon. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks for having us.
bye, thank
Bye.
you.
Feel free to reach out, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.